I recently watched a documentary about the Vietnam War and was surprised when it started with post-revolutionary 19th century France. And I thought to myself, what could that possibly have to do with the U.S. involvement in Vietnam? It turns out that Vietnam was first colonized by the French, and that when the Nazis conquered France during World War II, it left a big power vacuum into which the French naively stepped in the late 1940s and 50s. And so it turns out that the right place to start the story of the Vietnam War is indeed the reign of Napoleon III in France. I've told you this because to fully understand today's solemnity, we must not go back in time just 2,000 years to the time of Mary's life, but many thousands of years earlier to what seems like a completely unrelated story. A newly married couple had an idyllic life, blessed by God. God loved them dearly and gave them everything that they wanted. And all he asked in return was a smidgen of dietary discipline. I don't remember all the details, but it had something to do with one tree and not eating the fruit. Now the woman, her name's not particularly important, but we'll call her Eve, was free of sin. Nevertheless, she let her arrogance get the better of her, and instead of rejoicing in the great gift of the garden, she chose to defile it, taking her husband down with her as well. And again, his name doesn't matter, but we'll call him Frank. Nah, that doesn't sound right, does it? You know, there's a Hebrew word that means son of the earth. It means Adam. We'll use that. Adam was his name. But the result of this treachery was that both of them were forced to physically leave the garden, body and soul. Now, just like with the Vietnam story, one might wonder, what does the story of Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit have to do with the Assumption of Mary? And the answer is that Adam and Eve's fall is the beginning of the story of salvation history that culminates with Christ's victory over death on the cross. And God put an exclamation point on Christ's victory by ensuring that the new Eve, Mary, is taken body and soul into the garden of heaven when her time on earth was finished. Whereas Eve had lived in arrogance and had deflected blame when talked to by God, Mary responded with humility when God came to her and said, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. May it be done to me according to your word." Both Mary and Eve were born sinless, yet Eve abused that privilege and was expelled body and soul from the garden. Mary magnified the trust and gift that she had been given by God and was rewarded by being taken body and soul into heaven. Magnified. The word is not actually in the text I read today, but it is thoroughly within it. The name we use for that prayer that Mary reads is the Magnificat. And Magnificat is Latin for magnified. And indeed, if you were to take a much older edition of the Bible in English, the first line of the prayer would read, "My soul magnifies the Lord." Each of us faces clear choices every day and every moment of our lives. We may not realize it, But we are living in a modern-day Garden of Eden. We are richly blessed by God in more ways than we could possibly comprehend. But we have a choice. We can choose to either magnify this great gift, or we can choose to defile it. So what are we going to do? And perhaps just as importantly, even once we decide that we want to magnify, how are we to know what the right choices are to do that? And I think today Mary shows us the way. And I'd like you to join me in pledging that every time we are faced with a difficult choice in the future, we pause and repeat a modified version of the opening words of the Magnificat. We would say, I desire that my soul will magnify the Lord, and that my spirit will rejoice in God my Savior. Because by phrasing this way, we turn it into a hope, a desire, a choice that we intend to make. And that will make it more clear to us what the right choice is, because we will have phrased it in a way where we know what our ultimate goal is: to magnify the greatness of God's creation. And that is why we say, I desire that my soul will magnify the greatness of the Lord. And I desire to rejoice in God my Savior. And if we do that, we will become seeds that will bear great fruit. And we can rejoice knowing that we have made the world a better place.